Thank you very much that we can have a look at your studio here in Miami.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for coming.
And yeah, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about your work, of course, but first of all, where did you meet? I think you studied at different places.
Yes, we met in Chicago the day that Alain was moving back to Miami. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and then we met here in Miami about 3 months later again.
We were both born in Cuba.
Yeah.
I was born in Havana, and Neraldo in Matanzas.
Yeah, which is the province down.
But we both left very young.
Yeah, I think I left at 6.
So in a way, we're very nomadic. I lived in Madrid for a while, in Chicago, and Miami, and New York. And
I lived in Miami, Chicago, all over, and back to Miami.
Yeah. And now you're just back from, I think, Liverpool, and you have been previously in Berlin also?
Yes.
yes,
Yeah, we went to preview, and we went to see the Liverpool Biennial and talk to the people there about our work.
Yeah. So maybe you will do some work for Liverpool Biennial?
Hope so.
it's in the plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Yeah. And you also have several places here in Miami where you exhibit during Art Basel Miami Beach. I think in the library and also at Scope.
Well, we have a piece up in the library. It's an installation or a sculptural installation called Indradhanush of a rainbow in the public library downtown. And we'll be exhibiting also at Scope.
The piece in the library is a pretty large-scale sculpture that's composed of steel and clothing. And what we had done is kind of prefabbed or manufactured a steel rainbow, and then we basically dressed it. And that's in an exhibition called Polychrome Affinities. That'll be up through December 15th. So it's kind of our tour de force for Art Basel. That's the largest piece we'll have up. And we kind of chose that because it's kind of neutral ground. It's an educational system, and it's not geared for sales, which kind of is a cool thing. Essentially, the piece is based on unity, all the colors coming together create an ethereal rainbow. This is kind of a material rainbow where you could actually, it's very tactile. You can walk through it, and it just kind of lives in a space where there's a lot of traffic, so there's constant interaction between the public and the piece itself, both visually and physically.
Yeah, it's a rainbow that you can touch. And not just that piece, but a lot of our work, because of the material we used, has a lot of underlying meanings to the disposability of a culture. Because we use clothing that has been cast off, and we pick it up, and most of our sculptural work is based on that thought, and using materials that we accumulate from throughout the neighborhood.
We recycle a lot of stuff. We also really are interested in found objects.
It's just repurposing the
Yeah.
found object.
Yeah, I think
It's a pretty ongoing theme for us.
Yeah, things have intrinsic values. I mean, whether they're worthless or not. I think when you end up composing something that supersedes what the original intent of the object is, that the energy that comes from the previous life kind of is transformed into the work, and it creates a dialogue that's kind of outside of you. So we do like working with the recycled materials just because of history. Also, it kind of has an archaeological, contemporary archaeological reference, because it's
Because we're always digging.
well,
We're always
we're
digging
not
for
only
it.
digging, but it also defines a certain period of time. Clothing because of fashion and all this stuff, but electronics, they're constantly changing. So if we're using, the hair dryer there is from the 50s. It's very indicative of periods and where people were at. So I think there's a historic interest in the work in that respect too.
How long do you work already together?
We've been working together for about 13 years now.
Yeah, We met in 95, and I think in 96 we actually started working.
In '97, we got the studio.
Yeah.
Can you explain the process, how you work together, or is there not a specific way
Well,
you do it?
it just varies with everything that is made. When we paint, I mean, you know, you have the basic, you know, priming and that, and we take turns because we both hate doing that. When it gets time to be creative, we often, like, one of us will start it, or we'll both start it if it's a background, and then we kind of take turns. Ultimately, everything we work with is compiled layers that ultimately create the finished product. So we're able to switch back and forth. Thus, the piece is not mine or his. It ultimately becomes both of ours.
Yeah, the process varies depending on the medium that we're using for the most part.
Yeah, for sculpture, it's a matter of collecting. You know, whether it be tables or clothes or weird knickknacks or whatever. I mean, we're just drawn to certain things.
And we always go out collecting together,
Yeah.
usually. And with the sculptural pieces, we usually just work on it in unison,
Yeah.
back and forth. Sometimes I take over a certain task, and you might take over another one, but we crisscross a lot. So eventually, we're both doing everything.
And there's a lot of conversation. For instance, when we, the horn on that unicorn, I mean, we've had that horn now for 6, 7 years. Always wanted to work with it, never really knew what to do with it. All of a sudden, because there's one horn, it says, okay, we'll make a unicorn. It's like we had the mannequins. All this stuff is stuff that's just kind of accumulated. And I think it just takes the one time where we put attention to the one object, and then a piece forms from it. Often, when we pick out a garment, it can determine, like, a body of work. Like when we've collected ties from every imaginable source. Everybody gives us their ties, and we're thinking, what can we do with ties? And then, you know, the nature of ties is that they're constricting and they're kind of tight around the neck. So from that evolved nooses and snakes, which I think conceptually makes a lot of sense.